My name is Helen von Dadelszen, and I always introduce myself saying I'm from New Zealand originally, because as we're talking about voice, otherwise I find people actually get distracted by my accent, try to figure out where is she from? Is she Australian? Is she American? Is she British? Is she South African? So I say that right off the bat. But I've lived almost half my life now in Europe, and I'm based near Geneva in Switzerland. I am a founder of Present Potential, which is quite a recent limited liability company, but I have been coaching and training people on public speaking and voice for about 7 years now. I got into the development of what I'm doing now because I was working in large-scale healthcare events, and we were bringing thousands of really interesting researchers, it was in HIV, from all over the world for these international conferences. And we spent a lot of money doing it, and it was quite prestigious to get these scholarships. And when they got up on stage, it was a disaster. These really smart people doing incredible work all over the world just did not know how to communicate their work to the world. And as I come from a really theatrical background, and I've always been on the stage, my parents were Toastmasters, and we were always performing, I found this such a pity. And once I got involved in Toastmasters, I realized that I was actually quite good at helping people speak better. And so at some stage I was made redundant, and I used the opportunity to explore if I could do this as a career. And so that's where that all started with.
So let's dive into voice confidence and expression. So what have you learned about the link between voice and self-confidence?
What I've learned about voice and self-confidence is how personal our voices are. And this is the way that the world hears us, the way that they receive our message. And in fact, the voice is a habit that we've created over time due to many factors, and we can actually change it because it's a habit. And it's so important to be able to control your voice, to be intentional with it, so that you are getting your message across in the way that you want to. And the link with confidence is, if we're confident in what we're saying and then how we're saying it, we naturally exude more confidence and we feel confident in ourselves, and that comes across. So you might even have seen really good communicators who don't really have a message, but they sound very convincing because they sort of have this very trustworthy voice, and they're very controlled, and you sort of lean in, you say, oh wow, this must be important, they know what they're talking about, they're confident, but in fact there's very little content there. So it is really, really powerful. It's not just what we say, but it's how we say it. And that has a huge impact on the audience and those receiving our message. Confidence is a really complex subject, I believe. You can definitely act confident, fake it until you make it, with performance skills. So using your voice and your body in a confident way. But if you don't have the content, then there's nothing really there. What I always say to people is, you shouldn't wait to feel confident to do something. Confidence isn't a state of being. Okay? What you need to do is take courageous action. So do the thing before you feel confident. Know that it's going to be a stretch. Know that you're going to feel nervous, worried, concerned. Your heart rate's going to go. Your brain's going to start thinking, don't do that. No, they're going to judge you. You're not, who are you to say these things? So that's all normal reaction in the human body. But that is not a sign to say, don't do it. The feeling of nerves or those concerns that you have are not a stop sign. They mean that you care about what you're doing and that what you're doing is important. And so you need to learn how to manage your nervous system and do the action, the courageous action anyway. And then you will build your confidence. You'll see that, in fact, even though it felt like a life or death situation, it wasn't. And you managed in a great way, or maybe okay way, or at least you didn't die. And with that, you build up the confidence and realization that you can do more. And that builds a feeling of confidence. But you shouldn't wait until you feel confident. It's very rare that I actually feel, yeah, I've got this, I'm confident. I always feel the nerves, and I know that's normal. It doesn't mean I shouldn't take the action. It means that I'm on the right path, that I'm human, and I know how to manage my nervous system so that I can create or act or perform even though I don't feel 100% confident in my body. So many people hold back to speak up, to share their message, to share their ideas with the world, and particularly women. Now, public speaking is like the ultimate stage to be judged. And so the fears that we feel are very human, evolutionary, very important for us. And so when we put ourselves out there, well, our ancestors, if they said something or did something that was not accepted by the group, they would be shunned and potentially left to fend for themselves. So it really was a life or death situation. Nowadays, it's not the same. You may have a bad performance which could affect your career for sure, but it's very unlikely you're going to die from the experience. But this is why the fear stops us. And especially now with so much information, so much content that we're receiving all the time, we think you need to be essentially a very polished actor or actress to be able to have the value to share our ideas. What's holding people back? These ideas in their head that I'm not good enough, it's been said before, so-and-so is not going to like it. All of these thoughts that go through our head, and that's what holds us back. I think that the reason that we see less women, or typically we hear that women find it harder to speak up, is because we are a little bit more self-aware and typically, stereotype, but more aware of ourselves, how we're seen, how we want to be seen, the other roles that we all hold. And so that puts on another level of complication in terms of building the confidence to be able to say things. Societally, we are quite early on the journey of having equality, and the woman's role within the thought leadership or the business space is quite new. And so we're still working on that and nudging our way to have equality with men. And so that adds so much more complexity as well, right? Whether we're conscious of it or not. So I think we think twice and we want to do an even better job because we are judged potentially with a different level of criteria than our male counterparts. We all have our own personal hang-ups. So I've never really had a problem in trusting my voice as it is, because from a very early age, I was taught how to use it. I sang, I was on the stage. So I've never had a situation where I've been worried about my voice per se. However, being a New Zealander, a Kiwi in Europe, has brought an unexpected challenge for me with my funny accent. It's something that I am quite conscious of. I remember when I was teaching English in Milan to Italian adults mostly, and I would say a word and they would repeat it back to me, and I said, no, you can't say it like that, you sound like a Kiwi. Not that there's anything wrong with the Kiwi accent, but I was trying to teach not received pronunciation, but a good level of English. And I realized very early on moving to Europe that our accents can really break down communication in some settings. That stuck with me, and now I do what I do. I'm trying to own my voice and my own particular accent. I always say our voice and our accent are part of who we truly are, and so there's no right or wrong accent, but it is something I'm very conscious of. Another place where I am conscious of my voice is not really how I sound, but the message I'm giving. I think, like everyone, let's just say everyone in the world, we're worried about being judged, saying the wrong thing, upsetting other people, having people say, oh, who are you to say this, or to negate what we're saying. So for me, it's something I constantly work on internally, the mindset that I do have something to give. There is value. I do know what I'm talking about, but I've often got this voice in my head saying, who are you to say that? So it's more that part of the voice rather than my voice technically that I am worried about. During my session at the retreat, we're going to look at the power of intention, and participants will think about how they want to sound to their particular audience. It's not necessarily what they say, but in fact how they're using their voice to support that message and get it across. They will walk away with some techniques on breathing, on vocal production, and some sort of dials that they can turn up and down to sound more or less confident, warm, persuasive, caring, whatever that intention that they have. I can explain to them how they can modify their voice so that their voice can better support the actual message that they are getting across. Beyond vocal technique, I really want participants to walk away understanding that they actually can control and change their voice with an intention. You're not stuck with the way that you're currently speaking. It is a habit and you can modify it. So to be more aware and intentional about how they are using their voice. The first step you could take is to think about the intention. Depending on who your client is, what do you want them to think, feel, or do after they've spoken to you? So is it, wow, she's really sure of herself? Or is it, she seems like a really caring, open, supportive person? Okay, to define that is already really helpful, and then I can show participants how to use their voice to sound more like that. Providing spaces like this for female founders and business owners is really important because, especially as women, we really thrive in community. And by spending a few days together, learning, sharing, breathing, eating, I think it creates a sense of belonging, a sense of I'm not alone and other people have similar challenges. And I really think that's so beneficial, especially for women. The other thing I think is really great about such a retreat is that it gives us an opportunity to step away from every day and just think about our business and ourselves. Because we're such an integral part of our businesses, we can't extract ourselves from our business. And to spend time just on that, rather than being a mum, being a partner, being whatever else you are in your life, is very beneficial, because we're trying to do all of the things and often we don't have time to really just think about ourselves and our business and that our connection between those two. I am most looking forward to the time away from the rest of my life to really reflect on what I'm doing, how I'm showing up in my business, and my next steps. We have to keep continuing to grow, even if that just means internally with our mindset. And so I'm really looking forward to dedicated time for that and sharing with others. One thing that I've been very conscious of doing over the last year, 18 months, is making sure that I build in purposefully space in my calendar and in my to-do list to recharge. Being a coach and doing a lot of performance, it's draining. And so especially with age, I realize how important it is to actually prioritize those things. And people tell you this all the time, but I've now got it in my calendar, blocks of time, it's color-coded so that it's not an added benefit, an added extra when I have time. It's actually an integral part of my day and part of my week. And that's something I've been really working hard on and something that I'm finding hugely beneficial as I continue to build my business. In terms of the systems I use, I have to be really, really careful with my calendar. Most of my coaching clients can book me directly. Anytime I see anything come in, I need to make sure I create the buffers. They're not just within my booking system, but also sometimes I'll need an extra travel time or a shift between meetings. So I'm very reliant on my calendar. And I describe it like a jigsaw sometimes, having to fit in all the pieces. I've got pieces with my kids, for myself, for my business, for my private life, for the other things that I do. And so I have to be very purposeful about that. In terms of being accountable to making sure that I have time for myself, I treat basically the meeting requests as non-negotiable. They're in my calendar. They're potentially months out as regular occurrences. There are very few places where I would allow something else to take priority over that. So it's simple things like building it into the routine. So every morning, I say every morning, it might be definitely 4 or 5 mornings a week, I'm walking the dog with my partner. So that's a special time. It's around from 7 till 8, something like that. So that's not in the calendar, but it's a non-negotiable. It's just part of the routine. I know that if I say, let's walk this evening, it's not going to happen. One of us is going to get pulled into something else. Something's going to happen with the kids. Something else will come in. So the first thing we do when we get up, we get out the door and walk the dog, for example. And then the other things are just finding moments in the day where I can, or in the week where I can fit in a swim or an exercise class or lunch with a friend, and I sort of have to look at that usually 3 weeks to a month out to make sure that that's happening regularly. And I find that if I don't do that, and I haven't not done that for a long time now, I'm not as available for my clients or my kids or my partner as when I do that. It is a big chunk of my time, but because it's non-negotiable and it's really prioritized, it does happen, and I do see the benefits of it. The one bold move that I'm currently making is I'm in the process of writing a book. It's about courageous action, how we can't wait to be confident, and I'm hoping to launch that soon after the retreat, actually. I never considered myself a book writer or wanted to write a book, but I have found myself writing one, and I think it's going to be pretty helpful for people. So it talks a lot about managing your nerves and the little steps that you can take, the courageous action, so that you can build up your confidence and feelings of confidence.